Quantum Shift. Written by Savage Tempest.
Chapter 1. I screamed, or would have screamed if I had enough air in my lungs. Crashing bright lights, vertigo, nausea. It felt like my guts were being pulled every direction all at once, my head splitting in half. I opened my eyes and the real nightmare began. I was trapped in a hexagonal glass booth. No, I was inside the quantum reality interface. My disorientation ebbed as I took in the horror around me. Blood everywhere. Scientists and lab techs sprawled on the floor, bloodied, lifeless. Dr. Clauser, his head bent at an unnatural angle. Everyone dead. What happened here, and why was I in the QRI transporter? Fear welled inside me. Tanya. Was she okay? I needed to get out of the transporter. The quantum reality interface was small enough for me to touch both hands on either side. Claustrophobic. I wasn't, but right now, I was 2 shades from panicking. Lab 5's doors bisected and a cop rushed in. He took in the massacre with a scowl and aimed his gun at me.
Hands up.
The barrel of his Beretta gleamed under the lab's bright lights. I just stared at the cop, feeling sweat on my forehead. He was 35 at best, with unnatural blue eyes against skin 2 shades darker than my own. Biracial, lean build, someone I could take down, minus the gun he was carrying.
It's bulletproof,
I told the cop, not wanting him to damage the transporter.
I'm trapped.
The cop, Chambers according to his name tag, didn't lower his gun, but he didn't fire either, which meant I might be able to talk my way out of this mess.
My name is Nathan Sloan. I work for Annihilation.
The startling blue eye stared through me.
How do I know you didn't kill these people?
I spread my hands and looked meaningfully around at the glass chamber surrounding me. Chambers lowered his Beretta and regarded me.
What happened here? Who killed these people? I don't know,
I said honestly.
I passed out, I think. I need to find my wife, Tanya Mitchell. She's Annihilex's COO.
Chambers took several moments to scan me up and down. I wished he'd put the gun back into his holster.
Tanya Mitchell. So, why does your wife have a different last name? Said she wasn't changing her name for no man.
I left out the part that we were divorced. My slightly dishonest answer won me a smile from Officer Chambers, who really didn't look much like an officer now that I thought about it. Too soft, too pretty. A second cop darted into the lab, and like Chambers, made his way in gun first. A bit sloppy, but definitely not an amateur. The dirty blonde cop looked surprised to see me as he saddled up to Chambers.
Who's this?
He asked. His name tag read Jacobs. Chambers shrugged.
Says he works here. I do work here, and obviously, I'm Dominion.
I tapped the red eagle pin on my collar. And these guys were laborium, the working class, barely above the serfs. Still, when it came to homicide, particularly multiple homicides, class was secondary. I needed to get these guys on my side, get them to release me from the transporter.
I really do work for Annihilation. Honestly, I didn't kill these people. Please, I need to find my wife.
Jacobs looked at Chambers again, eyebrows raised.
She's supposedly some executive for Annihilation. And what are you?
Asked Jacobs.
Physicist.
I left out ex-Marine.
You don't look like a physicist.
Chambers' sky-blue eyes narrowed.
You don't look like a cop.
I shot back.
A model. Actor, maybe.
His partner, Jacobs, chuckled.
He thinks you're cute. I am cute.
Chambers' expression softened.
Show me some ID.
I reached into my side pocket, slowly, hoping I had my wallet on me. I did, thankfully. I opened my wallet and pressed my Annuplex ID against the transporter's front glass wall. Chambers' bright eyes shifted from the ID back to my face. It was his tanned skin that made his eyes so bright.
You look better in person.
Before I could respond to the unfair criticism of my company photo, Chambers added,
How do I get you out?
I didn't know the steps by heart, and it was awkward as hell looking at the QRI console from inside the transporter and basically looking at it upside down. After several flubbed attempts, one of the QRI glass walls slid open, Jacobs raised his gun at me.
Frisk him.
Eyes on mine, Chambers slipped behind me. I considered whether or not to attack his partner, but then rough hands slapped my chest from behind.
What's this?
Chambers hissed. Took me a moment to realize that Chambers was referring to my QRI medallion, hiding inside my shirt. It was coming back to me now. I was supposed to use the medallion to locate the rogue QRI device that's messing with reality.
You don't seem the type of guy who wears a lot of jewelry,
Chambers said, suddenly way too close. Chambers used his foot to spread my legs further apart. He knelt behind me and started with my feet. It felt weird feeling Chambers' hands slowly slide up my leg. Rough hands squeezed my calves, then my butt. I started to protest when Officer Jacobs spoke up.
Should I leave the two of you alone?
I bit my tongue to keep the flush from my face. A hard pat on my behind signaled Mr. Hansey was done. These guys were screwing with me. In the middle of a massacre. Geez.
He's clean,
Chambers announced, stepping back over to his partner.
We should take him in,
Jacobs insisted, his dark eyes hard.
I've got to find my wife,
I pleaded, desperation coloring my voice. I'm a good actor when I have to be. Chambers was the weak link, so I focused on him. He wants to let me go, but he's not sure, so he looked to his partner, who shook his head. The floor trembled. A low boom came next, ending our standoff. Jacob's eyes widened, his face pale and contorted, his gun hand trembling. Never a good thing. His partner, thankfully, quickly regained his composure. Like me, I briefly wondered if he too had served in the military. Guess he wasn't as soft as I thought he was. Eyes scanning the laboratory for signs of structural breaks, Chambers spoke up first.
We need to finish sweeping the building. Nah, man,
Jacobs protested, his voice edged with panic.
We need to get the hell out of here before the roof comes down on our heads.
The man was scared, but thank the heavens he finally slipped his gun back into its holster. Chambers, still looking like he should be on the cover of a men's magazine, turned to me.
You can leave, but you should wait outside for the ambulance. Officers should be here soon, too. They'll want to take your statement. Sure.
The lie came easily. We all knew I wasn't going to wait, but at the moment it didn't matter. The explosion changed everything, and I needed to find Tanya, find out what went wrong with the QRI transporter. My gaze drifted to Clauser. He was a brilliant physicist, and a bit of a dick. The gaping hole in his chest meant his death was quick. I shook my head, still trying to clear the cobwebs from my mind as I made my way to the door. I looked over my shoulder. Chambers and Jacob were staring at me. I nodded and ducked out. Something wasn't right. I could feel it. This nightmare was far from over. Chapter 2. I didn't bother with the elevator. Instead, I took the stairs 2 at a time, my mind racing. Who was behind the explosion and the massacre downstairs? Someone outside of Anuplex Corporation must know about the QRI transporter, know about my mission, and they were willing to kill to stop it. There weren't any people around, which was a good thing. They probably evacuated the building when the shooting started. Certainly a prudent thing to do if you want to stay alive. Unlike me, running into the fire. I made it to the 5th floor in under a minute, grateful that I kept up with my cross-country running since leaving the Marines. Wasn't even breathing hard. Not bad for a guy in his 40s. The corridor was quiet and dark except for the natural lighting coming from the windows. Ignoring the smell of smoke, I headed east toward Tanya's corner office opposite our CEO's office. Tanya wasn't some big corporate officer when I met her, but the woman was always smart. Much smarter than me. But it was her nice ass that first caught my attention, and when she turned around, it was those honey brown eyes. I reached her office, my head steady as I pushed the door open. It creaked slightly, revealing an empty room, everything in its proper place. No sign of a struggle. Good. Hopefully, the landline still worked. I tried to clear my mind as I sank into Tanya's chair, my gaze landing on the family photo on her desk. She's smiling, her honey brown eyes bright with youth and hope. I'm surprised she hasn't gotten rid of this picture since I'm in it, kissing her cheek. No pictures of Jimmy, of course. My heart sinks further. He was the death of us. I shook my head to clear the memories and reached for the phone, noting Tanya's immaculate desk as I punched in her number. A sickening whine broke the silence, accompanied by flashing lights over the phone. Then a holographic screen appeared. Tanya's worried brown eyes stared back at me.
Nathan? I thought...
I'm okay.
Where are you?
Your office.
A flicker of concern crossed Tanya's face. If I hadn't been married to her for so many years, I might have missed it. It was gone that fast.
You shouldn't be there. It's too...
I'm fine. I need to know what happened.
Tanya's jaw clenched slightly. She absolutely hates it when I cut her off.
I'm not sure. All I know is that Lab 5 was attacked by terrorists. We evacuated.
Leaving the rest of us to fend for ourselves. Voicing that opinion would win me an argument. What I needed was information.
Is Turner okay?
Yes. We're both at a secure location.
Good.
It's not like I cared about Anuplex's CEO. I just wanted to know if the Anuplex's major players were still on the board.
We're compromised.
Obviously.
Tanya didn't hide the annoyance from her voice this time. I took a deep breath and replied calmly. Too much was at stake for us to be squabbling.
Something went wrong with the QRI transporter.
Panic, or as close to panic as Tanya ever gets, flashed across her face.
We need to regroup.
An ear-splitting screech cut Tanya off as her image blinked out. I dove under the desk just as the world erupted around me. Concrete and glass rained down. Hopefully this stupid desk will hold. It did. Barely. When the noise finally stopped, I crawled out from under Tanya's desk. I desperately wanted to wipe the guck from my eyes, but that would only make things worse. Still, I was grateful that I was in one piece. Tanya's east wall wasn't so lucky. Half of it lay inside the office. What held my attention, though, was the sky, unusually bright, blue even. My eyes drifted to the tower. It wasn't lit. The Anuplex Tower, stationed 43 miles from the Anuplex campus, was never off, even during power outages, which were becoming more frequent lately. The tower had its own generators. Bad things would happen if the tower was ever turned off, which was why the terrorists attacked it so often. They never get far, though. Staggering to my feet, I realized I needed to get out of here, hopefully without tripping or getting gouged by the rubble filling Tanya's office. The corridor was mostly intact, and I wasn't injured, minus the bruises and aches. Thankfully, I didn't run into Chambers and Jacobs. No way they were cops. Stupid. I should have trusted my gut. Chambers and his buddy were likely behind the explosions and murders in the QRI lab. I hustled down the cascading staircase and practically ran to the building's front doors. I could hear police sirens and fire trucks getting closer. Of course, the doors didn't open. Anuplex might have locked the place down, but it could have been the terrorists too. Chambers didn't strike me as the terrorist sort, but that and $1 would buy me a pack of gum. I sprinted back toward the lobby's security check-in desk, ignoring the monitors and electronic equipment stowed behind the high marble desk. A bright red fire extinguisher sat behind a glass cabinet. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed a stapler from the desk and slammed it into the cabinet, shattering the glass. Careful not to cut myself on the jagged opening, I tilted the extinguisher toward me and pulled it out of the cabinet. Good. It was big enough and heavy enough for what I needed to do. I returned to the lobby doors and positioned the extinguisher slightly behind me, like I was swinging a bat, then let loose with a heavy thwack. Cracks spiderwebbed across the glass. Took 3 more tries to break the damn thing. Must be tempered glass. I stepped through the jagged opening, unable to avoid the crunchy broken glass. The sun greeted me. In LA. Imagine. Guess it takes a terrorist attack to get a sunny day here. Anuplex's campus was empty. I barely made it 5 feet when a mechanical voice ordered me to drop to my knees and put my fingers on top of my head. It was one of our security drones, looking like an oversized metal basketball with 2 shot barrels sticking out of its sides.
I'm Nathan Sloan.
I pointed to the circular pin on my left collar.
Dominion class.
Sure. I was at the bottom of Dominion's caste system, but it sure beats being stuck in the Laborium class or worse, a serf. The drone wasn't impressed. It gave me 10 seconds to comply. Gunshots ended all discussion. Bullets bounced off the drone's dull gray shell as it spun around to the real threat. Chambers and Jacobs were firing at the drone, a crime that could land you 12 years in prison if you're lucky. The police sirens were closer now. This wasn't going to end well. The drone dove toward the terrorists, unleashing a hail of bullets. Chambers and Jacobs separated as they ran for it. I stood frozen, watching the drone chase down Jacobs, not sure what to do.
Come on,
Chambers shouted as he ran toward me. I shook my head. Trying to outrun drones was suicide.
Suit yourself.
Chambers yelled as he ran past me. 2 more security drones appeared, blocking his path. They started firing as he zigzagged back toward me. This was bad, real bad, so like a fool, I ran for it. Chambers followed me. I was surprised that Chambers caught up to me so quickly. Then again, fear is a good motivator. We sprinted for the edge of the campus toward the streets, me only a couple of feet ahead. Unlike the Anuplex campus, there were plenty of people here, cars too. We ran across traffic. I heard Chambers' warning too late. A black minivan was coming straight at me. Pain and vertigo slammed into me as the world shattered into darkness. Chapter 3. A white-hot furnace of agony seared my eyeballs as I crashed back into consciousness. I cursed and squeezed my eyes shut, pressing the balls of my hands into my eyes to ease the pain. Temporary blindness isn't supposed to be painful. Mine was. Thankfully, though, after a few moments, the white spots and pain faded. Even better, I wasn't dead.
Nathan?
I forced my eyes open and saw Dr. Reeves staring at me through the QRI transporter, concern on his creased face. Lab 5's white walls were no longer smeared with blood. No dead bodies.
Everything's all right, Nathan. I want you to take 4 deep breaths for me.
Dr. Reeves did a pretty good job of keeping his voice soothing. Now, if he would tell these lab techs to stop staring at me like I was crazy, though I imagined I looked pretty ridiculous with my back pressed up against the transporter wall like a scared animal.
Deep breaths, Nathan.
I did as ordered, feeling my body relax some, though I was certain my cortisol levels were through the roof.
I'm fine. You can let me out now.
Dr. Reeves's eyes flicked to Dr. Clauser, the Quantum Reality Interface Project's lead scientist. Clauser didn't look particularly convinced of my mental state, but offered a curt nod anyway. They let me out. I suppose a lowly physicist like me, who did a lot of his undergrad work online, should be honored to have a luminary like Jerome Clauser escort me to a meeting with Anuplex's CEO. Dr. Reeves came too, along with Agent Murphy playing armed security guard and looking super serious. Not a good start to a meeting in my book. We took the elevator to the 4th floor. No one said anything. However, there was a moment when we exited the elevator. Clauser and Reeves' backs were turned. Murphy winked at me. We're not exactly close buds, but we sometimes go out for drinks and complain about women. Nice guy, really. But I was under no illusions that Murphy wouldn't shoot me if Anuplex leadership gave the order. I half expected Murphy to rush to open the door for us, but he didn't. The room was an expanse of cold, sleek sophistication. Polished floors and an oblong mahogany table that went on forever. One wall was one huge glass window, showing off Los Angeles' hazy sky and the Anuplex Tower in the distance. The smog had gotten so bad that even Dominion had to admit that climate change is real. But no one wants to give up their fancy cars or any other luxury, so we forced the laborium and serfs to make all the sacrifices. Maybe my mission was DOA. We keep heading this way. Our planet's doomed anyway. Tanya, dressed in a gray skirt suit, sat on the far end of the mahogany table to the right of Anuplex's grand CEO, Oliver Turner. She offered me a tight smile when I sat opposite her. Turner, of course, sat at the head of the table and regarded me with a poker face. The only thing more stifling than this room was Turner's spicy cologne. Turner leaned forward and offered me a plastic smile, meant to be reassuring.
Is everything all right, Nathan? Yeah. Good.
Turner nodded, his washed-out blue eyes appraising me, pretending that Clauser didn't inform him of my reaction when I came back from the mission. Crafty bastard, which probably made him a good CEO.
Tell us what happened, Nate.
It didn't escape my notice that Tanya had a pad and pencil next to her coffee cup.
Don't leave anything out.
So I told them everything. The massacre in Lab 5, my phone call with Tanya, and the drones, explosions. When describing the terrorists, I kept my description of Chambers vague, not mentioning his sky-blue eyes, which would make him easy to find if his counterpart existed in this reality. I was a little more specific with Jacobs. I shouldn't be holding back, but I couldn't seem to stop myself. The people at this table were hiding things from me.
Your state of confusion,
Clauser said.
It's quite normal from what we know of QRI travel.
What we knew wasn't much. Sure, Anuplex has used the quantum reality interface on serfs, but post-mission evaluations were still in their early stages. I'm the first Dominion guinea pig.
I have to admit,
sighed Turner.
I was hoping you'd make more progress locating the rogue QRI device. Sorry, too busy getting run over by a minivan.
Clauser assured me that was not the case.
You were lucky your hour limit ran out.
The QRI team had pre-programmed my trip into the alternate reality. As long as I had on my bulky smartwatch, I would automatically be brought back to this reality's QRI transporter within the prescribed time parameters, no matter where I was. Eyes still on me, Tanya cut in.
We need to find out who these people are who destroyed the lab. They could be the ones messing with reality.
And that would be very bad, because Anuplex was the one who messed with reality first. We were the ones who created this new world. No one would dare say that, though. It's a crime punishable by death, even for Dominion citizens. But everyone at this table knew it was true. Still eyeing me like an errant child, Turner pulled away from the table and stood up to his full 5 feet, 10 inches.
Send him back. Immediately. I need a shower.
Tanya scrunched her face and fanned her hand in front of her nose.
He does need a shower.
Make it happen, then.
Turner looked down at me.
A change of clothes, too.
Clauser inclined his head.
I'll see to it. You do that.
Turner turned back to me.
You do realize how important this mission is, don't you? Yes, sir.
And I meant it. Sure, this post-New Dawn world had its problems, but it was our world. 1 shower and 2 protein bars later, I entered Lab 5, where Dr. Clauser and his people were waiting for me. Tanya joined me and even walked with me over to the transporter.
Afraid I'll run for it?
Tanya smiled at me as she removed the Dominion pin from my collar.
No. Sure, you're a big jerk, but you're no coward.
We stood there for several moments, Tanya looking up at me like she used to, but her honey-brown eyes were cold. A technician handed her my medallion, and Tanya passed it over to me.
We added a spy camera.
Tanya gave me a peck on the cheek.
This time, don't come back empty-handed.
Chapter 4. Vertigo again. And yeah, blindness, after images technically. Orange and blue mostly. No intense pain-switching realities this time, but plenty of noise. Muffled but like a helicopter is nearby. Wind in my face. Squinting, I opened my eyes slowly. Christ, I'm in a goddamn Black Hawk. Worse. Seated next to me by the Hawk's open door was Officer Chambers, now dressed up in fatigues and a helmet. It's almost dawn. I'm in fatigues too. I scanned the rest of the cabin in the dim light. 6 soldiers in the cabin, 2 pilots in the cockpit. What's going on? I should have been transported to this reality's parallel version of Los Angeles, not some jungle flyby mission. My mind was a kaleidoscope of questions. The quantum reality interface was supposed to be an exact science, mathematically down to the last equation. So why the hell was I not in Lab 5 on Earth 2, which for all intent and purposes was an echo of the real Earth? I'm not a top-level physicist like Clauser, but I was pretty damn sure the kind of displacement I was experiencing now shouldn't be possible. Maybe there was some disruption in the transporter's particle stream, which, again, shouldn't be possible. My body stiffened as I felt someone leaning over my shoulder. Chambers, his face way more handsome in camo face paint than anyone had a right to be, was much too close.
That's your son?
I looked down at my hands, surprised to find my fingers cupping a photograph of Jimmy.
Yeah. What's his name?
Chambers leaned in closer, ostensibly so he didn't have to yell over the Black Hawk's engines.
Jimmy.
Why won't this guy shut up? I needed to think, to focus. I stuffed Jimmy's picture into my left breast pocket. A thick voice sliced through our headsets.
15 minutes, ladies, to LZ.
A man with dark-set eyes like a weasel had a microphone attached to his helmet and was built like a tank. He must be this mission's team leader.
Remember,
He continued.
we're here to save a bunch of bleeding heart doctors. I don't want any friendly fire.
I closed my eyes and tried to think.
You okay, man?
Obviously, Chambers doesn't know how to take a hint.
Listen, Chambers, I'm sure you're a nice person and all when you're not killing people, but I need to figure out what's going on, so I'd appreciate some quiet.
I wasn't sure if Chambers would respect my wish for quiet, but the universe certainly didn't. A shattering boom roared through the cabin, the Black Hawk lurching as if slapped by a giant hand. Red lights flashed, warning alarms blared.
Missile impact!
Barked the team leader. It felt like the tail rotor had been hit. We were going down. I shouldn't be here. There was a moment of unnatural stillness, a heavy pause where even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Then the world flipped on its axis. The Black Hawk spun like a dervish, engines wailing in mechanical agony. Chambers was out of his seat, unbalanced by the spin. His hands grasped at thin air. I lunged, grabbing Chambers' nearest hand as he slipped out the door into the void. Every muscle in my body screamed as Chambers' full weight yanked at my shoulder socket. It was all I could do to hold on to the inside of the Hawk as the dawning horizon tipped into a stomach-lurching angle. The Hawk plunged toward the jungle, and there was nothing I could do about it. I felt Chambers' grip tighten on my hand, his bright blue eyes locking onto mine. We both knew that he was going to die, but I didn't let go. Familiar white-blue lights saved me. Don't know what happened to Chambers. Hell, I don't even know his first name. My stomach was still twisted in knots, and I was doing my best to blink the white spots from my eyes. But as far as QRI transitions, this one wasn't so bad. I was back in Lab 5. Familiar faces stared back at me in astonishment. Dr. Clauser stared at me, his mouth open in numb shock. His team of scientists and lab techs weren't faring much better. Judging by their reactions, I assumed I was still on Earth, too. I checked my watch. I still had a good 40 minutes or so before the QRI transporter on real Earth pulled me back. I tried smiling and knocked on the transporter's wall with my knuckles.
Someone let me out already. You...
Clauser's voice trembled, his usual bluster gone.
How did you get in there? You put me in here.
I ignored the scientists and lab techs exchanging worried looks and tried to appear as non-threatening as I could manage. No small task given my size. I'm only 6'2", but I am mostly solid muscle. Plus, Tanya always told me I had that marine intimidation thing going for me, something that she found attractive, used to find attractive. Clauser moved several feet to the right of the transporter and huddled with one of his lab rats, a thin specimen of a man with gold-rimmed glasses and a goatee better suited for a coffee shop. Clauser whispered something. The guy scurried off like an obedient rodent. 10 minutes stretched into an infinity, with Dr. Reeves making a cameo appearance. When the lab doors bifurcated a second time, Tanya walked in, dressed in a star-white power suit and killer eyeshadow to match. Agent Murphy, AR-15 swinging by his right side, followed close behind. I was still stuck inside the transporter and running out of time with nothing to show for it. Tanya marched over to me. Her beautiful honey-brown eyes were cold and raked me up and down in seconds.
Who the hell are you?
You know who I am.
Tanya turned to Dr. Reeves, who was looking as nervous as a cat in a room full of rocking chairs.
Did you take a blood sample?
Reeves hesitated.
We were waiting for orders and...
He cast a sideways glance at Murphy.
Back up.
Well, now you have it.
Tanya shifted her attention back to me.
Take 3 steps back and don't try anything stupid.
Glancing over my shoulder, I barely had 4 feet. The transporter was that small. Once I moved back, Clauser pressed a button on the QRI console, and the transporter's front glass wall slid to the side. Good old Murphy aimed his rifle at my face, not close enough to leave a mark, but almost. Visibly uncomfortable, Dr. Reeves looked around before stepping inside the transporter. There wasn't enough room for us to stand shoulder to shoulder. I glanced at the needle in his raised hand, figuring that should things go south, I could use the good doctor as a shield. Reeves drew a blood sample like someone disarming a bomb, then quickly retreated. Murphy's rifle barred my exit.
What gives?
Tanya stared at me, her eyes searching for something I couldn't quite place.
Who are you really? And how did you get inside the...
Quantum reality interface transporter?
Tanya, Clauser, and Reeves eyed each other. The rest of the research team had gone back to work, though some of them snuck furtive glances now and then.
I'm here because you sent me on a mission.
What mission?
Some of the company, or more likely terrorists, have made their own version of a quantum reality interface, which is messing with our reality. Well, what will be your reality. You and Turner sent me here to find and destroy that piece of tech.
You're lying.
Yeah, I also had plastic surgery to look like me.
Typical ultra-rational Tanya.
Why don't you believe me?
Because you're dead.
Dead. For a couple of moments, all I felt was numb. I'm dead, at least in this reality. A part of me wanted to know how it happened. No, that's one wormhole I don't want to go down. I needed to complete this mission, or I might really wind up dead.
I need some information. Why?
Asked Clauser.
Would we give a spy information?
My eyes stayed on Tanya.
Jimmy wasn't an accident.
Tanya's mask cracked, her eyes moistening slightly. It took her a few moments to recover. I didn't say Jimmy's death wasn't an accident to spare Tanya the embarrassment. She turned to Clauser.
Leave us alone for a few minutes.
Clauser tried to argue, but Tanya cut him off, and then turned to Reeves.
Have his DNA results ready by the time I'm finished with him. You may leave and take everyone with you.
Reeves and Clauser hesitated until Tanya glared at them. She's second in rank at Anuplex only to Turner. The lab was emptied in under a minute, a good thing since the clock was ticking. Arms folded and mask back in place, Tanya watched me, somehow managing to look down at me even though I'm taller than her by several inches, even in her heels.
All right. Tell me about your research into my family.
No research, Tanya. I told you we shouldn't leave Jimmy with your mother.
Tanya's face reddened as if she had been slapped. There was a mixture of anger and relief in her eyes.
It really is you. It was an accident, Nate. You know that.
And you know that your mom has been having episodes for years.
Episodes was a euphemism that Tanya insisted we use to describe her mother's failing memory.
You never stopped blaming me.
I hadn't. The day I found out that her mother left Jimmy unattended in her hot SUV for almost 8 hours. I'm not a crying man. That day I cried. Same day Tanya and me stopped sleeping in the same room. Too painful. Things went downhill from there. Tanya wiped a tear from her eye.
What do you want to know?
Chapter 5. My trip to Second Earth had been disappointing. Turner's words. Anaplex's CEO watched me with a thoughtful eye, content for the moment to allow Tanya and Clauser to do the interrogation for him. Between these two powerhouses, I was almost questioning my own conclusions. The boardroom's overhead bronze ring lights were on since the sky was stormy gray. Murphy sat opposite me with Dr. Reeves to his left, so everyone could get a good look at me. It was enough to make a guy feel a little paranoid. Tanya set down her glass of water, eyes on me.
Tell us again, Nate, about the Black Hawk.
I've told you 4 times already.
Tanya leaned back in her chair.
Make it 5.
So I told them again, about being hit by enemy fire, chambers falling out of the Black Hawk. No one said anything, no reactions to my brush with death. Dr. Reeves continued taking notes. I half wondered why he was here. Next, they'll bring in a therapist.
What did he look like?
Tanya asked.
Chambers? He looked scared. You know what she's asking, son,
Turner said. Tanya's eyes lingered on me before shifting to Clauser, who was seated to my left.
Jerome.
Clauser shook his head.
It's simply not possible. Sure, certainly this QRI transporter can shift a person into an alternate reality. A second or 10th Earth, perhaps, but... Theoretically, you mean?
We all looked at Dr. Reeves, surprised that he had the nerve to speak up. Clauser proceeded like he hadn't been interrupted.
Well, the quantum reality interface might be the greatest invention known to man. And I'm not simply saying that because I am its inventor. My point is, physics still applies. Quantum jumping, or shifting if you prefer, is fantasy.
His last point was aimed at me.
The transporter shifts you from one place to the same place, simply in another reality. A QRI transporter may or may not be there in that alternate reality, but you will still reappear in the same location.
Tanya and Turner's attention lingered on me as Clauser continued his scientific filibuster.
QRI technology is still in its infancy. There may be some side effects we don't know about yet.
Describe the man you keep seeing, Nate.
I stifled the urge to sigh aloud. Tanya can be obstinate, like the rest of these people. Like me, I guess.
Light-skinned black male. Almost my height.
Murphy, who up till now had been silent as a ghost.
Good looking?
I kept my eyes on Tanya and Turner.
A pretty boy.
Mentioning Chambers' blue eyes would have been helpful. Why was I holding back? I knew the answer but didn't want to admit it. A part of me didn't fully trust Anuplex. Or Tanya. Maybe I didn't fully trust myself.
Are you going to send me back?
I asked, feigning nonchalance, as if that would work on Tanya. She could see through my game. Always could. Turner cleared his throat.
Listen, Nathan. This mission is of vital importance. The world as we know it is at stake.
Strange things are happening worldwide.
Tanya glanced at Turner, who offered a subtle nod.
Things are starting to disappear. People are disappearing too. The news is downplaying it naturally, but eventually, the truth will get out.
I couldn't stop my gut from clenching, or stop my eyes from darting to the agent standing guard at the door. Or guarding me, more likely.
He's here for Oliver.
Tanya, forever observant. Still, she could be lying. More likely the rumors about threats against Turner were true.
Are you going to send me back, or what? It's not that simple, son.
That's when it hit me.
You're sending Murphy?
Not at this time.
Tanya clarified.
You're our only physicist with military experience. We need you, Nate.
I wanted to believe her. Tanya shifted her focus to Clauser.
Jerome, who else is smart enough to build his own QRI?
Rather sexist of you.
It was a cheap shot, but Tanya wasn't the only one who could play games. After you live with someone for a few years, you know which buttons to push.
Women have invented many great things, but usually a male takes the credit.
Clauser cut in before Tanya and I took any more pot shots at each other.
I can count on one hand how many scientists outside of Anuplex have explored quantum reality, and only one person who could possibly pull it off, if he had enough financial backing. Gavin Rowland, but he's dead.
Maybe not on Earth, too.
We all stared at Murphy.
Earth 2?
The disdain in Clauser's voice was thick.
As good a name as any,
Murphy said, shrugging.
So send me back to Earth 2.
I aimed my request at Turner, not mentioning that I had already come to think of the parallel Earth as Earth 2.
I know I can find the rogue QRI.
Clauser looked pained.
You make it sound so easy. You do realize the transporter requires enormous amounts of processing power. We have GPUs in reserve,
I countered. Turner cut in.
Those chips are expensive, Nathan. We've already caused a blackout with your last trip. Since when has Anuplex cared about a few surf neighborhoods losing power?
The temperature in the room seemed to plummet, and everyone was now staring at me, even the guard at the door. When will I ever learn to rein in my temper? My words practically bordered on treason. Tanya smiled, breaking the tension slightly.
A plugged-in surf is a happy surf.
Same goes for the laborium,
Reeves muttered.
Maybe we're missing something here, Murphy said. The terrorists could be after the tower.
That argument was quickly rejected. Even Clauser agreed on that. The terrorists were trying to create their own reality.
So,
I asked.
what do we do?
Tanya leaned forward, her honey-brown eyes warm.
You get some sleep. Then I'll take you out to dinner.
She flashed me a smile.
Come armed.
Chapter 6. From what I've always heard about the Nakma neighborhood, it was not the place you wanted to be at night, unless you wanted to end up dead after you've been robbed, unless you were a serf who didn't mind a bit of danger along with your entertainment. Yet here we were rolling up to the pier in a limo. Tanya didn't look the least bit concerned as the chauffeur helped her out. I followed close behind, trying not to focus on Tanya's bare back. Murphy got out on the street side. There was a line to get into the Silk. Boring guy that I am, I had never been inside the warehouse turned restaurant/nightclub. I did do my research though, and I wasn't happy about any of this. Too many variables, too many things could go wrong. Tanya sashayed to the front of the red velvet line, ignoring the angry gazes of people already waiting. 2 suited large bouncers blocked the entrance. Trolls, really, disguised as human. Tanya's fingers brushed the Red Eagle Dominion pin near her collarbone, and the bouncers hesitated. They sized Murphy and me up, obviously not impressed at the company Tanya was keeping.
100 for Dominion,
said bouncer number 1.
Each. Since you're so pretty,
added the other bouncer,
we're giving you a discount.
It wasn't a discount, and insubordination against Dominion citizens was a crime punishable up to 5 years in prison. Basically, anything Dominion didn't like was punishable with a prison fine. Neither bouncer worried. We were in serf territory.
300,
purred Tanya.
Is that all? Nathan.
It was hard not to sigh. Yeah, Tanya was playing a role, but the truth is, she always enjoyed wielding power over others, including me. I peeled $300 bills from my wallet and passed them to bouncer number 2. He didn't smile, just snatched the bills and slipped them inside of his black jacket. He and his buddy parted. Bouncer number 1 opened the door for us. The music hit me seconds before the tangy smell of weed. The pulsating beat of music and loud conversation washed over us.
You sure this is a good idea?
Murphy and me now flanked Tanya, gently but firmly cutting a path further into the restaurant portion of the club. Tanya paused, her fingers lightly touching my cheek.
With such strong and handsome escorts like you and Alan, a girl couldn't be safer.
She was flirting with me, despite including Murphy in her compliment. I felt that old pull toward her, that magnetic allure she always had. Despite us being divorced, sometimes I ached for her, but the woman could be so damn calculating. I needed to be careful. We navigated our way through a labyrinth of cloth-covered tables and red velvet chairs toward a booth where Danny Artichoke held court. Not sure where he got such a strange nickname, but Tanya claimed that Danny was one of the best collectors in Los Angeles. Weapons trafficking, information, whatever you wanted, Danny Artichoke could get it for you. Before we even got within 20 feet of him, Danny's dark brown eyes met ours. He was flanked by 2 suited brutes wearing sunglasses, of all things. Why not just wear matching t-shirts that say, "Hired Goon"? 2 attractive, barely dressed women sandwiched the dealer.
Slumming tonight, are we?
Danny's smile dripped with criminal intent.
I'm looking for a friend,
Tanya said. Danny's eyes casually appraised us, his attention finally lingering on the bulge under Murphy's jacket, where his weapon was tucked.
What makes you think I can help?
Tanya's voice was as icy as it was silky.
I've got plenty of money that says you can.
Danny's attention drifted to the woman nibbling his ear.
What's your friend's name?
Gavin Rowland.
Danny stiffened. So did his bodyguards.
Disappear, gals.
His playmates pursed their lips in adorable pouts, but neither of them argued. That left 3 against 3. Danny dished up a lazy smile and leaned back.
Roland. Sounds expensive. Is it another Dominion designer brand I should be aware of?
I couldn't see Tanya's face, but I was pretty sure she was giving him one of her plastic smiles. Happens when you live with someone long enough.
How much?
For a dead guy? Oh, I'd say $10K for his whereabouts.
How about I give you 1,500 and let you live?
Tanya countered. Danny's hand raised ever so slightly, probably signaling his guards to kill us. Murphy moved fast, his gun clearing his holster and firing a perfect headshot at the nearest goon. Diner screamed as I followed suit, whipping out my Glock and taking down the other guard with 3 rounds before he could even draw. Danny froze, his face a white canvas of shock and fear.
My offer's now down to 400.
Tanya said, not bothered by the carnage in the least.
Plus your life.
5 minutes later, we were waist-deep in a club-turned-battlefield. Between the screams of terrified club-goers and the incessant rattle of gunfire, Murphy and I advanced. Tanya made herself scarce, promising reinforcements. That would be nice, but after a couple of deployments with the Marines, you learn that you can only count on your team and yourself. Right now, my team was Agent Allen, Murphy, and me. The EDM music was now drowned out by shrieks of terror and automatic gunfire. Our boots splashed through puddles of spilled alcohol, shattered glass crunching underfoot. Most of the warehouse now only offered red lighting, so advancing proved slow, and I was down to 2 clips. The people firing at us were mostly hidden in the dark. Could be my imagination, but it seemed like they were taking pains not to shoot the innocent people struggling to escape. Just us.
For a dead guy, Roland is pretty well armed.
At least his friends are.
Murphy spun toward our 9 and fired, taking down a shooter who had popped up from behind a stack of crates. Murphy popped out his clip and slapped another magazine in its place. This entire mission felt wrong. Too many people getting hurt. Turner had said our mission was to take Roland in for questioning. Why did I believe the guy? Too late now. Bullets rained down on us from above. Someone was shooting at us from the rafters. More fire came from our 6. No way we were going to make it out alive. I continued firing and heard a rumble to my left. A berserker in golden armor burst through the walls like a living tank, spraying concrete every which way.
A berserker?
Gawked Murphy, his right arm limp with blood.
Now we know Anuplex isn't playing,
I said, wiping too much sweat from my brow. Berserkers were strictly for military use, elite soldiers inside tungsten armor with built-in weapons, missiles and rifle fire mostly. How did Tanya get one here? Sensing what was going to happen next, I shoved Murphy forward toward a small passageway. The berserker started spraying everything and everyone in sight with high-caliber bullets. Clubgoers scrambled to escape as the berserker lumbered forward, smashing bone and flesh in his wake. The music stopped.
You hear that?
Asked Murphy, still clutching his Glock while putting pressure on the wound on his arm.
Yeah, I hear it.
A steady, almost lyrical voice boomed over the speakers.
So much death, Mr. Sloan. To kill one man. We're not here to kill you.
I assumed it was Roland speaking.
Is this the world you really want, Mr. Sloan?
Asked Roland. He didn't sound frightened to me. He was buying time. For what? I felt pretty sure that between me and Murphy, the berserker, and whatever else Tanya had outside the warehouse, we had the man cornered. And then, reality began to shift. I blinked several times, not believing my eyes. The warehouse walls stuttered. Actually stuttered. No, they were wobbling and disappearing. Fear gripped my chest as realization sunk in. Roland had activated a quantum reality interface. Reality was shifting. The night air shimmered. The warehouse's red lights and shadows began solidifying. I forced my eyes away and turned to Murphy.
We need to get out of here, now.
We bolted, but even as we did, the floor beneath us started to vanish. We weren't going to make it. The entire warehouse disappeared, and then the world shattered.
If you're enjoying this audiobook, please let the author and YouTube know that you want more by giving this video a like or subscribing to the channel. Cheers.
Chapter 7. 7 hours of sleep should have been enough. It wasn't. I had nightmares about the warehouse exploding into different realities. And here I was about to go back into another nightmare. Earth 2. I reminded myself that I didn't feel claustrophobic inside the tiny QRI transporter booth. Anxious, maybe. Yeah, definitely feeling anxious. And conflicted. The people in the warehouse didn't stand a chance. The authorities didn't care about them, and Anuplex certainly didn't. They were serfs, mostly. Roland and his fellow terrorists weren't much better, though at least they tried not to kill people indiscriminately. Until they turned on their damn quantum reality interface. Collateral damage. I understood the need for it, but all those people. Lab 5, as usual, was buzzing with scientists and techs darting back and forth. Lots of computer power in this place, presided over by Anuplex's resident genius, Jerome Clauser. Altering reality seemed like a good idea when Tanya got me to join Anuplex. She didn't mention how Anuplex planned to implement a human caste system. She and Turner claimed that the QRI project would combat global warming, possibly even alleviate world poverty. Lies. Power is what they were after. And I fell for it. I always suspected that Tanya and Anuplex never had any interest in me contributing to Clauser's quantum research. They just wanted an obedient soldier savvy enough in quantum mechanics to serve as a failsafe. And this failsafe volunteered again like an idiot to try to save the world. Lab 5's doors slid open, and Tanya strutted in, radiating energy despite the shadows under her eyes. I wondered what time she went to bed, and immediately cut off that train of thought. I did not want to think about my ex-wife in bed. Tanya glanced at me on her way to Clauser. The two of them huddled, breaking it with a determination that made me uneasy. They soon joined me at the QRI transporter.
Morning, Nate.
Tanya's smile didn't reach her eyes.
How do you feel?
She doesn't care how I feel, just wants to know if I can complete the mission.
Feel great.
I lied.
We need you at your best, Nathan.
Clauser warned.
Earth is running out of time.
Nate can do it.
Tanya shifted her eyes back to me.
He'll save us.
Brow furrowed, Clauser didn't look convinced as he handed me a black cube. It was the size of a small box, barely able to fit in my hand. Not exactly light, but not heavy. Smooth, almost opal-like surface.
It's an EMP,
Clauser said.
Once you find Roland's QRI, press the red button twice. You'll have 5 minutes to get clear. What's the blast radius?
Clauser stayed mum, so I turned to Tanya.
1 or 2 miles.
What? You planning on leaving me stuck on Earth 2 while it implodes?
Of course not.
Tanya said, an edge to her voice.
Leave your medallion transponder at least 2 miles away from Roland's QRI, then come back for it. We'll pull you back.
EMP bombs only affect electronics, not living tissue, so the blast wouldn't hurt me.
No hour time limit.
Tanya shook her head. So if I fail, there's a good chance that I won't be coming back. Not to this world, at least. I felt reasonably sure that Clauser and his team had double-checked the QRI's programming to deliver me inside Earth 2's transporter, but after what happened the last few times, I wasn't feeling great about my chances.
Ready?
Tanya looked up at me with those big, brown honey eyes of hers.
Ready.
Tanya stepped partially inside the transporter, her toes touching mine. She leaned in and kissed me, not caring that Clauser and who knows how many other people were watching. Her lips felt deliciously warm, but I know her well enough to know there was no passion behind the kiss. It was a kiss goodbye. So I broke it.
You can save us, Nate. I know you can.
I nodded.
Let's do this then.
Eyes on mine, Tanya backed out of the transporter and the glass wall slid into place. Clauser nodded at the tech near the white console on the transporter's left. Several beeps later, I could hear the thrum of the QRI transporter powering up. A flood of white-blue light bombarded my vision. I hunched over, feeling like I'd just taken a punch to the gut. Dizziness made my legs wobble. The world tilted and twisted as I lost all sense of orientation. Lab 5 disappeared. Chapter 8. Blinking to clear my vision, I realized that I wasn't inside Earth 2's QRI transporter. No surprise there. I was surprised, however, to find myself seated in a cramped compartment dominated by blue neon lighting. I turned to the figure seated to my right. Chambers. Dressed in an industrial white baggy uniform, looking all concerned, and gripping a screwdriver for some reason.
You all right?
Chambers asked. I didn't respond, trying not to panic as I stared at colorful fish swimming outside the window.
Are we in a submersible?
I craned my head left and right, noting the circular walls and ceiling, which were lined with white and blue strips of light. Plenty of equipment, too, especially for such a tight space. I could feel us moving, downward.
A little late for panicking.
Chambers said.
We're stuck here, my friend.
My attention settled on the two computer dashboards in front of me. The dashboards were like mini computer screens. My eyes darted to Chambers' left dashboard. It had a diagram of a water vehicle, probably the one that we were in.
Please tell me that isn't what we're in. Government prototype.
That was bad. I could almost feel my cortisol levels spiking.
Are you sure that's us? The design is all wrong. A submersible's supposed to be spherical and not have a tail shaped like the back of a bird.
Chambers leaned his head back on his chair's headrest.
For a serf, you're pretty damn smart.
Serf. Apparently, in this version of Earth 2, I was a serf and not Dominion. A serf stuck on a submersible. So much for Clauser's theory about quantum shifting being fantasy. Chambers stared at me as though I was going crazy. I wasn't. And it dawned on me what else was wrong with this parallel reality. Chambers' eyes were black, like opals. Before I could stop myself, I asked,
What happened to your eyes? Bloodshot? They're not blue. I'm black, Sloan. Most black people don't have blue eyes.
It was still quite obvious that Chambers is biracial. His skin, golden brown and fashion model looks, however, remained the same. I could hardly believe where the QRI transporter dumped me. Who would build such a craft like this? I was tempted to close my eyes and wish this all away when I heard a groan, coming from the walls.
Don't worry, man.
Chambers gestured at the air behind him.
This baby is made of the toughest plastic. You're kidding me. Nope.
Chambers knocked on the curved ceiling above us.
This heap is carbide fiber reinforced plastic.
He pointed to the cockpit window.
And the best plexiglass money can buy. No, that can't be right. I'm no engineer, but even I know that submersibles are made of titanium and syntactic foam, not plastic.
I leaned over to get a better look at Chambers' dashboards, mostly navigation with a small joystick for steering.
Are we in the sea or ocean?
Again, Chambers looked at me like I was crazy.
Doesn't matter.
My gaze flicked to the depth meter. 3,482 meters and counting. I couldn't slow my pulse despite my survival training.
We need to get back up.
Chambers looked at me, puzzled.
Why? Before this thing implodes.
Chambers tried to laugh it off.
Calm down, Sloan. Control is not letting us back up. Not until we complete the survey, anyway.
I locked eyes with Chambers, desperate to make him understand.
Once we hit 3,500 meters, this tin can's going to crumple like tissue paper. Now how do we contact the people in charge?
Reading the dead seriousness in my eyes, Chambers sighed.
All right, but it won't do any good.
I watched Chambers fiddle with the communication equipment on his right dashboard, pausing when we heard another unsettling creak from the hull walls. We were in a tomb, soon to be buried. I might get out of this alive, if the QRI transporter kicks in and works like it's supposed to. But Chambers, he wasn't going to make it. After 2 minutes of failing to contact control, a staticky voice came through the ceiling speaker.
Yes, Rover 1?
Chambers looked at me, not sure what to say, so I reached over him and pressed the red comm button.
The hull's starting to crack. We need to return to the surface immediately. Implosion is imminent. Repeat, implosion is imminent. Please stand by.
Minutes ticked by. The creaking intensified.
Forget them,
I said.
Can you get us back to the surface? Yes, but... Do it.
Chambers turned back to his dashboards, his hands flying across its controls.
It's not responding.
I glanced at the depth meter. 498 meters. Cold reality settled over me. There was no way out. When we reached 3,500 meters, the hull would collapse, auto-ignition would occur, and we'd be incinerated in an instant. Looks like I failed to save Earth, the real Earth. I let my gaze drift forward, getting lost in the ethereal beauty of the ocean beyond the glass, the dark water. And Chambers, he was going to die again. Chambers practically jumped out of his seat, mumbling to himself.
I can't die. I can't. My parents are counting on me. To do what?
Chambers stopped pacing, desperation in his dark eyes.
To make a difference.
He slumped down, back against the hull. I unbuckled myself and joined him on the floor, ignoring its coldness. Neither of us said anything for the next couple of minutes. No word from control either. Too late anyway. I was pretty certain that we were almost at 3,500 meters.
What's your first name?
I asked, looking straight ahead at the curved hull in front of me.
Caden. Caden. Nice name. Different. Glad you approve.
Caden took a deep breath, then asked,
Will it hurt a lot?
I shook my head.
Pretty much instantaneous. Oh.
Caden rested his chin on his chest. Our shoulders were touching, but I didn't care. I wasn't going anywhere, apparently. After a minute or so of feeling sorry for myself, I snuck a peek at my fellow doomed soul.
So, Caden, what should we do in our final moments?
Caden looked up, a spark in his eyes.
Guess we should make the most of it.
He leaned over, and before I could stop him, he kissed me. Chapter 9. Darkness ripped into me as I felt my head being pulled in one direction and my feet in the other. My stomach twisted as I tried to shake off the vertigo. Just as suddenly the pain was gone. Maybe my body was starting to get used to quantum shifting. Opening my eyes, I was back inside the QRI transporter. Judging by the way Clauser and his team were staring at me, I must be back on Earth too. And I have a mission to complete. Before my version of Earth disappears.
You're...
Clauser's voice trembled.
Back? Yeah.
I pulled my backpack off my right shoulder and pulled out the black cube.
And I need to get this near Roland's QRI, so I can destroy it.
Clauser nodded absently, then shuffled away, muttering something about getting Tanya and Dr. Reeves. Clauser was undeniably brilliant, but it was turning out to be a real wimp. Left alone for the moment, my thoughts went to Roland. How the hell did he manage to quantum shift, not just transport? And why did Caden keep showing up? Once or twice is coincidence. 3 times. No, this was a pattern. In less than a half hour, I was climbing into a spacious black SUV, white leather seats and new car scent mixed with bulletproof tension. Tanya already sat inside, along with CEO Oliver Turner, Dr. Clauser, and Agent Alan Murphy. 2 other agents were in the front, both of them tall, nondescript, probably ex-Special Forces, and not very talkative. A second SUV led our way out of the Anuplex campus. It was smaller and less luxurious, more utilitarian. Holding the blinking medallion in my hands, I looked up at Tanya.
You sure Roland's in Long Beach?
Tanya glanced at Clauser, who looked like he swallowed a prune. I wasn't sure if his discomfort was due to me being alive or the fact that reality was fracturing.
Like I said, things disappearing and reappearing are happening worldwide. However, it's concentrated in downtown Long Beach.
Turner cut in.
Nathan, I want you to lead our team.
He wanted me to say, "Yes, sir. Absolutely." Expected me to say it. I wasn't feeling it, though. Sure, I would do my job. Didn't mean I had to like it. I pulled out my Glock and checked the clip.
ETA 10 minutes, Mr. Turner. Tell your driver to get off the highway when we're 2 miles away.
I slipped my Glock back into my side holster, my thoughts on the EMP bomb inside my backpack.
Why?
Clauser asked, puzzled.
Insurance.
Tanya and Turner exchanged a look I couldn't read. We had absolutely zero problems speeding down the highway. The 710 was a ghost town, a surreal stage set for an apocalypse. The news and governor warned everyone to avoid travel whenever possible. When I asked about the empty freeway, Turner said that unauthorized vehicles would be detained. People didn't want to be detained. Reality fracturing was new, definitely scary. But it was still the unknown. Getting detained, well, everyone knew that was something you didn't walk away from. A splash of thunder and the SUV jolted sideways as it screeched to a halt. Turner cursed. Clauser demanded to know if the driver had lost his mind. He looked out the window like we all did, each one of us stunned into silence. Reality seemed to ripple and then shatter like glass, and then knit itself back together seconds later. Turner yelled at the driver to get back onto the freeway. Our reprieve didn't last long. The SUV swerved, throwing us against our seatbelts. My heart raced. Parts of the freeway were warping like heated glass, as if reality itself was rebelling. Then we heard it, the whirring of metal blades. Drones. A barrage of gunfire tore through the air as a pair of drones descended, peppering the first SUV with what sounded like high-caliber bullets. The SUV quickly slammed into the freeway cement divider. As we zipped past the battered SUV, I detected no movement coming from our trash sister vehicle. The drones were still pursuing us, though, and firing. Our driver did his best to zigzag as much as possible without flipping the SUV over.
Those are our drones,
complained Turner.
Why are they attacking us?
Murphy wasn't listening. Too busy firing at the drone on our left. The driver's wingman was firing his assault rifle at the drone on the right. Their bullets were having no effect on the drones. No surprise there. The back window shattered.
Use your damn ordnance,
I yelled at the driver up front. Turner was hit and rattling off curses. Tanya had retrieved a med kit from somewhere and was already using gauze pads to apply pressure to the wound on Turner's bleeding shoulder. The agent up front had his window entirely down. He pulled 2 circular devices from a tote bag. With deadly precision, he tossed one at the pursuing drone. It connected, a fireball of an explosion ripping apart the drone's left rotor. In a shower of sparks and metal, the drone plummeted to the ground, causing a second explosion. The remaining drone was relentless. The agent's next throw missed, but the third ordnance landed on the freeway right underneath the flying menace, which left my ears ringing. A plume of fire surged skyward, consuming the drone in an inferno. Reality wobbled dangerously around us again, but our SUV continued speeding ahead. My nerves were totally frayed, probably like everyone else's. After we put some distance between us and the drones, I figured we were at least 2 miles from the terrorists. I leaned over and shouted at the driver,
Stop the car.
Clauser looked like he was about to bust a nerve vessel.
Are you out of your mind, Sloan? We don't have time for... Stop this car, or jump out.
Clauser looked to Tanya and a semi-conscious Turner for help. None came.
How about we get off the freeway first?
Asked Tanya. She was almost finished wrapping Turner's shoulder. I nodded. Tanya twisted around and tapped the driver on the shoulder.
Get off at the nearest exit, then stop.
It took less than 2 minutes to reach the next exit. A park was on our left and a gas station on the right. I scooted out of the SUV. Murphy followed me out.
You sure this is a good idea?
Asked Murphy, his round face etched with concern. The ground beneath us shifted slightly, a low dissonant thrum reverberating through the soles of my boots. My gut said, no. This was a very bad idea, but if I didn't leave my transponder watch behind, Tanya wouldn't be able to pull me back home, and if they didn't, I wasn't sure what would happen to me.
Just give me a minute.
I jogged across the street to the park. It appeared to be abandoned, just like the streets. A group of trees appeared and disappeared like wraiths. Inside, I found a metal fence circling a kiddie park. I hid the transponder near an old roundabout, wetting it behind a loose pole. Hopefully, it wouldn't shift into another reality. Regretting that morbid thought, I sprinted out of the park back into the street. The ground beneath me began to pulsate. White waves of light crashed on the asphalt surface. I reached the SUV. Murphy and the other 2 agents flanked the once pristine vehicle. The agents looked nervous but said nothing. Murphy and I jumped back into the SUV. Tires squealed as we lurched forward. Turner watched me buckle up with clear eyes while Clauser chose to ignore me.
You look better.
I said.
Dear Tanya was kind enough to give me a shot of amphetamines.
Back on the road, we were in a race against desperation. Long Beach's downtown skyline loomed close, haloed by a sunset of red and orange. It didn't take long to reach Roland's building. Typical corporate, 8 stories, with rows of blue-tinted windows, and a big Space for Lease sign guarding its small lawn. Roland and his fellow terrorists were smart enough to hide in plain sight, reminding me there was a good chance that Caden was also one of the terrorists, if he was still alive. Would I have the guts to kill him if he tried to stop me from blowing up Roland's quantum reality interface?
Go,
Turner urged.
Clauser and I will wait for you here. Take the men with you.
I nodded and slammed the door shut. I wasn't happy that Tanya was coming with us, but with the way reality was fracturing, she might be safer with us. I pushed through the glass double doors and into a marble lobby of nightmares. The walls pulsated like a wave monitor, and the floor shimmered with ripples of lightning, vibrating under our weight as if we were walking on the surface of a turbulent sea. Even the air seemed to hesitate, stuttering in short gasps as if the world was struggling to catch its breath. Before we made it halfway into the lobby, a deafening roar filled the space. A freight train burst through the east wall, spraying chunks of cement and glass everywhere. I threw myself on top of Tanya, but the flying debris vanished before it hit us. The train, however, smashed into the other side of the lobby, taking one of our agents with it. Poor guy didn't stand a chance. We got back to our feet.
What just happened?
Stammered Murphy. He was trembling, and I didn't blame him. My hands were shaking too.
I suspect that aniplexes and Roland's quantum reality interfaces are clashing, causing reality to fragment. We need to shut down Roland's QRI.
I spotted a large, spiraling marble staircase and headed for it. The others followed suit. Just as we reached the stairs, a bullet exploded in our driver's leg. Murphy fired back while I grabbed the agent's arm to stop him from falling.
Get him back in the car,
I told Tanya.
Perhaps we should set the EMP here and leave.
I need to make sure that the QRI device is here.
Another burst of gunfire had me ducking a second time. I waved for Tanya to run for it.
Stay as close to the walls as you can. We'll provide cover.
Tanya looked unsure, but finally nodded as she helped the agent back to his feet. I wasn't certain if she heard me. Discordant noises kept fading in and out. I spotted our attackers firing at us from the second floor. Jacobs, Caden's partner, and another tall female were shooting at us. Using thick support columns for cover, Tanya and the wounded agent were almost at the front doors. I kept firing as I tried making my way to the steps. Murphy was doing the same, his face a stoic mask of concentration. One bullet whizzed past my ear, rattling me. Wobbling walls and furniture disappearing and reappearing didn't help.
Sloan, we need to get up there now.
Couldn't agree more. But the entire building was shaking one moment and steady the next.
Okay,
I said.
Guess we should go for it.
Murphy nodded, eyes locked onto mine for a split second before we sprinted up the staircase, praying the steps wouldn't up and disappear. The moment I made it to the second floor, I took a split second to look back. Tanya and the agent were hustling through the front doors. I let out a sigh of relief. Rounds from enemy gunfire chipped away at the marble wall behind me. I threw myself behind one column. Jacobs and his pal would have to lose their cover to get at me. Jacobs made his move and ran for a better shooting position. I clipped him in the side, sending him sprawling. Turning my attention to Jacobs' partner, I fired 3 rounds. She ducked, narrowly avoiding my shots before firing back. She was pretty tall, and like Jacobs, She was an average shooter at best. No match for two trained agents like Murphy and me. To her credit, she didn't cower or waste bullets. Instead, the terrorist made a hasty retreat. Murphy had her in his sights, but I yanked his shoulder, causing his shot to go wide. Murphy pulled away from me, his dark eyes flaring.
What the hell did you do that for? I had a clear shot.
She's not important,
I said.
We need to find Roland's QRI device.
Murphy looked like he wanted to pound me, but he didn't say anything further. We charged up the staircase, our boots thudding against the steps that continued to shimmer and flicker. As we ascended the stairs, people materialized on the steps and just as quickly disappeared. Phantoms from Earth 1.
Which way?
Shouted Murphy. I slowed down long enough to pull my medallion from under my shirt. Its center green gemstone blinked rapidly.
Next floor.
When we reached the next level, I poked my head out slowly and only part way. No sense giving these terrorists an easy target. I had expected them to be better organized. Made my job easier that they weren't. This floor looked very different from what I had seen so far. Empty. Clinical. A large circular door loomed at the end of the corridor. The thing looked more imposing than a bank vault.
That's our target,
I said, and rushed forward, Murphy watching my six from behind. A waist-high cylindrical device stood guardian to the metal door's right.
You good at hacking?
I asked Murphy.
Sure,
he said, stepping back and unloading a bullet into the device. Alarm screamed, but the door irised open. My mouth dropped open. This place was like a temple or a shrine to the gods of technology. A colossal, intricate globe dominated the space, resting on a cobalt-blue circular stand. 4 columns of glass stood near the globe, casting soft blue shadows. Calling the obsidian-colored globe exquisite wouldn't do it justice. Gold points of light depicted the continents, oceans, and major cities.
Pretty impressive,
said Murphy, moving closer.
I take it this is Roland's quantum reality interface.
I nodded, still at a loss for words. This piece of technology was a work of art.
What's that then?
I looked to see where Murphy was pointing, annoyed with myself for missing it. Further into the chamber stood a barrel-shaped device, a good 8 feet tall, made of highly polished steel. Thick electrical cables trailed from it. It reminded me of an upgraded version of...
Transporter,
I said.
It's a QRI transporter.
This is way too spooky. Set the EMP and let's get out of here.
I pulled the black cube from my backpack and approached the QRI globe. Just as I neared it, the transporter hummed to life, its wide frame glowing with electrical ferocity.
Cover your eyes,
I barked. Murphy and I shielded our eyes as a surge of white energy lit up the chamber, making my skin tingle as if touched by static. The light dimmed in seconds, and there stood Caden inside the transporter, gun at the ready. I hesitated, but Murphy didn't. He pointed his gun at Caden and fired. Caden was faster, his bullet ripping through Murphy's arm. Murphy cried out, dropping his weapon and clutching his bleeding limb.
Put your little bomb down on the floor, Nate,
said Caden. The barrel of his weapon was now aimed at me.
Slowly. I can't do that, Caden. Please, don't make me shoot you, Nate.
I needed just a little more time to get a finger near the button.
Here I was starting to think you wanted to recruit me.
Caden shook his head, sadness in his dark eyes.
That was never the mission, Nate. So what is your mission?
I pressed, noting the discomfort across his face.
To kill you.
Caden's eyes shifted to check on Murphy, then back to me. The words were a punch to the gut, but now my finger was on the EMP button.
So kill me,
I dared, lifting the cube.
I press this button, your world dies. Our world, Nate,
Caden said, his eyes hurt, pleading.
All we ever wanted was to change things back to the way things were. Sorry, can't let you do that.
Caden's eyes hardened.
Forever the martyr. Well, your ex-wife is leaving you behind, while you're here playing hero.
I dared a look over my shoulder. A large wall monitor came to life, and yes, Turner's SUV was indeed peeling away, with Tanya.
Don't listen to him, Sloan.
Murphy was now on the floor, still struggling to stop the bleeding and not pass out.
The old world was pretty terrible, too.
I mumbled, torn.
Yes, it can be.
Caden still hadn't lowered his gun.
But in your world, only the rich and powerful stand a chance. Everyone lives to serve Dominion.
A little preachy. Still, he was right. I shook my head, trying to clear my mind, but it was my heart that was a whirlpool of conflict.
It's either your world, Caden, or mine. It doesn't have to be, Nate. It can be our world.
Traitor, Murphy hissed. I dropped the cube. As Caden's eyes tracked it, I drew my gun from my holster. Now we both had guns pointed at each other. This world has to die. Same with Caden and me both.
Sorry, Caden,
I said, pretending to be brave.
We're out of time.
Movement in my peripheral vision caught my attention. Murphy, struggling to lift his gun. Caden fired. So did I. Epilogue. Guess I should be happy. The good guys won. But there are no good guys in this world. Not really. And if there are, I'm certainly not one of them. I doubted Roland was one either, yet here I was entering his office, and wasn't impressed. One classic Maplewood desk, muted beige curtains. Sure, you could see some of the city skyline, but it was barely half the size of Tanya's office. Tanya. Don't think about her, Nate. Roland bolted out of his seat as I approached his desk. Early 60s, looks good in a suit.
Mr. Sloan, I'm so glad you're here.
His smile seemed honest, his green eyes warm. He offered his hand, nice firm grip.
Please, sit. Coffee? Tea?
I sat down in a not-too-soft chair, but declined the coffee even though I could use another cup.
You said you wanted to talk to me about the transporter? Ah,
Rowling said, sitting back down.
Straight to the point. Well, I wanted you to know that since Annuplex's stock has plummeted due to its QRI technology not working out, not in this reality.
Roland took a deep breath.
This is the only reality, Mr. Sloan.
He gestured to the window, showing a dusty haze that would probably burn off by noon.
Yes, it's far from perfect, but I would argue that it's an upgrade compared to the dystopian world you and your Dominion friends created.
I couldn't argue with him there. I still felt anxious to know his angle. Everyone had an angle.
Guess if this reality doesn't work out, you can always create another one.
Roland shook his head, a small frown on his lips.
As I said, there is no other reality, Mr. Sloan. I've mothballed the QRI project entirely.
Now that surprised me.
Why do I find that hard to believe? Hardly my place to say. But know this, Mr. Sloan. My discovering QRI shifting technology was a fortunate accident. Actually, my company's AI had a lot to do with it. Annuplex changed reality first, and most people didn't even realize it. We changed it back to the way things were. Well, as much as we could. So what do you plan to do with your new toy? And how do I fit into this grand scheme?
Roland nodded, ostensibly pleased with my response. Guess he was expecting me to be skeptical.
Now that Annuplex and its lackeys are essentially toothless, I plan to focus my attention and resources on things like climate change. We would like you to join us. We?
The door opened and in walked Caden. His eyes were star-bright green now, startling against his golden-brown face.
I believe you've met my son, Mr. Sloan. He certainly has, Father.
Caden saddled up to me at Roland's desk. I checked both men for hints of similarities. Definitely the green eyes, perhaps the straight nose, but otherwise, not much. Caden put a hand on my shoulder. I looked at it, contemplating knocking his hand off.
I would rather put my hand somewhere else, but that wouldn't be polite in front of my dad.
Caden flashed me a white smile. Had to admit. It was a nice smile. Pretty eyes, too. Didn't matter what color.
So, will you join us, Mr. Sloan?
Gavin Rowland served up a bright smile, already knowing my answer.
The End. Quantum Shift. Written by Savage Tempest. Copyright 2023.